The Ohio River. A quote from an unknown author. For hundreds and hundreds of miles, this most monotonously beautiful of rivers winds and coils itself among those ever-varying, seldom receding hills, skipped by a narrow fringe of bottomland. Those hills, soon to be vine-clad, were then one forest. Those bottoms, now smelling with farms, or disfigured by the shabbiest of towns and villages, were then destitute of inhabitants for hundreds of miles at a stretch. Blennerhassett Island, West Virginia, on the Ohio River, below the mouth of the Little Kanawha River, near Parkersburg, was the home of Nemacolin, chief of the Delaware Lenape Nation and longtime close acquaintance of Thomas Creosote and Christopher Gist. His death there in 1767 preceded the studied and strategic onslaught of European Americans who appropriated land nearby in Marietta, Ohio, upriver, after the War of Independence. The island plot was purchased in 1792 by Elijah Backus, who then sold the east end in 1798 to Harman Blennerhassett, Blanny to some locals, with his wife Margaret Agnew. Their widely acclaimed Blennerhassett house, where notable and ambitious politician Aaron Burr and the Blennerhassetts plotted an ill-fated expedition via the Ohio and Mississippi rivers, allegedly to establish a new government in the Southwest, now Texas perhaps, burned to the ground in 1811. This remarkable garden-like deposit of dirt in the course of the Ohio and the frontier mansion has since been restored to nearly its original appearance. The mystique of the Burr-Blennerhassett fiasco, which ended in failed charges of treason against both pioneering men, with the complicity of Harman's wife, today layers on the groves surrounded by water and in nearby Parkersburg like a confessing, soggy fog. I visited Parkersburg and hiked the perimeter of the island in 2020 on my way to Marietta, Ohio. Ghosts hovered in the springtime sunshine filtering through the canopy of enormous trees that still graced the garden-like land set apart. In the bend of a magnificent river, with the vine-wreathed and willow-fringed stately trees, looking in kingly air down upon its pebble-decorated sands in front, it was like a poetic dream of nature disclosing itself to the eye of the traveler as he, on his exploring way southward and westward, passed reluctantly on. A quote from Alvaro Gibbons. The saga of the Blennerhassetts and their reconnoiter with Aaron after Burr's failed but near election defeat of Tom Jefferson for President of the U.S. is bizarre. As small townships like Marietta, Belpre, and Fort Harmar began collecting citizens, the Ohio and Mississippi rivers increasingly adopted characteristics of a frontier trade tollway. Harman arrived by keelboat. Elms, sycamores, and cottonwoods were sacrificed neath the strokes of the woodman's axe, that a better, grander view might be had of the palatial mansion, which he had painted an alabaster whiteness, about $500,000. Lady Margaret, Harman's able wife, quote, could leap a 5-rail fence, walk 10 miles at a stretch, and ride with the boldest dragoon, robed in scarlet broadcloth, with a white beaver hat, on a spirited horse. She might be seen dashing through the dark woods, reminding one of the flight and gay plumage of a tropical bird. The rich and the famous were early and later visitors to the riverbanks, in search of more fame and some fortune, some in search of privacy and anonymity. Such was the state of Harman's Eden when the serpent, Aaron, entered its bowers. Quote, gifted, credulous, fated, unquote, might be written as characteristic of this, quote, son of the Emerald Isle, unquote, who sought to make an Eden within the wilderness. Aaron Burr showed up one day by flatboat, looking for allies and financing for a scheme to annex and perhaps spin off a southwestern chunk of the American Manifest destiny. Briefly, the subsequent expedition was a failure. Arrests in Alabama follow the leaders, and Burr and Blennerhassett both spent some time in jail. Burr stopped in Marietta on the 5th of May, 1805 to see the mounds and antiquities there, near Old Fort Harmar. The wily politician apparently met Lady Margaret briefly, was enchanted at least a little, and later wrote a complimentary letter to Harman, whom he had not met. After Burr left, Harman wrote by his own initiative, apparently, a series of essays published in a Marietta paper, arguing that the Western country, excessively taxed and taken advantage of, would be advantaged by a separation from the Atlantic states. Note of Blanny's statements were taken in Richmond, and rumors of Burr's interest in a possible, quote, separation from the Union, unquote, were mentioned even by then-President Jefferson. Jefferson, in November 1806, issued a pronouncement alleging, quote, that unlawful enterprises were on foot in the western states, unquote. In August 1806, with his daughter Theodosia, wife of Governor Joseph Alston of South Carolina, Burr visited the island a second time. Boats, supplies, and men soon after began to gather in Pittsburgh. According to the record, 15 boats, or bateaux, were built on the shores, after the Schenectady model used on the Mohawk River. Subsequent events suggest a chaotic venture that went awry for various reasons, not least because local opposition and federal intervention beached the flotilla and its ragtag band of mercenaries. Burr appeared in Richmond, Virginia in 1807 before U.S. Circuit Court Chief Justice John Marshall, purportedly on 2 charges, one for treason, the other for misdemeanors. He went abroad after acquittal in 1808 and returned to New York in 1812. The gentleman died September 1836. Harman faced a trial in Natchez, Mississippi, and was acquitted by the territorial authorities. He told his tormentors that Burr had advocated a commercial enterprise or land purchase and a military, quote, adventure. Together, they had conceived of a new country to be established on the eve of a Spanish war, helped along by Burr's accomplices. Traveling then by horseback toward his island home, Harman was again accosted in Lexington, Kentucky, and taken under guard to Richmond for trial with Burr. In court, Burr appeared with scrupulously neat attire in black, with powdered hair and queue, in manner dignified, composed, polite, impressive, and hopeful, never under a provocation, losing his temper, nor giving personal retort. Blennerhassett was as neatly and carefully attired, but less buoyant in spirits. Unquote. Gibbons. They got off, as mentioned, but Gibbons shrewdly concluded that the acquittal nevertheless, quote, left them wrecked in fortune and influence, and the ardor of their energies and ambition dampened, unquote. Justice Marshall's extensive decision essentially concluded that not a single witness to an act of war had come forward. Treason could not be determined by words or mere intentions. Harman passed from this world in 1831 on the Isle of Guernsey. Margaret was buried in a nondescript vault near 2nd Street in New York City. Harman Jr., one of her 3 sons, joined her later. Joseph Lewis, the youngest son, moved to Missouri and was an officer in the Confederacy. The other son, Dominic, was destitute and faded westward. The Blennerhassett daughters died of fevers in Mississippi. According to Gibbons, Charles Fenton Mercer, who was on the island in November 1806, made a full statement soon after the Richmond trial, giving his opinion of the object of the expedition, quote, in which he clears Blennerhassett of any designs against the peace and quiet of the United States.
There's a place under the moon I wanna see. I heard it's not that far away. It's where the bright lights never seem to go to sleep. Across a broken, faded road